You all with me? Says the Mechabe, we're finally moving on to hot. So we start off, I'm sorry, we already did hot, sorry. Siv David was hot, now we're dealing with Toire Dikehit. Toire Dikehit is really two, Kovush and Meliche. They're both not going to burn your finger, but Hashem says it's hot. The Torah says it's hot. Maliach kireteach, kovush kimavushal. Why does it say kovush kimavushal, maliach kireteach? I think I mentioned it already. I get confused now with the Hebrew shir and the English shir. I don't know where I said what. Where's Sherpin? Someone call him, please. He probably doesn't know. I'll wait a second.
What were you talking about, Tana?
Good answer. Good answer. I wanted to hear that. No, I wanted to hear yes. Even though I came late, I still want to know. It's coming? Okay. What I said was, and now we're starting with Torah Dikehit, which is Melicha and Kvisha. And it could be that I mentioned it in the previous year. I started just now, your mamish walked in, so you didn't misread anything. Then why is it Maliach Kireteach and Kovush Kimavushal? Why didn't you say Maliach Kireteach Kimavushal? So I think I mentioned it. That Kovush is Bishul, it's Oyser HaKoil, and Maliach is only Kireteach did Tzli. How much is Tzli? Meaning Beloy Reitev Oyser. Anyone remember? I think mamish discussed it with you guys. Kidei. Netila, it's Netila, but basically not kulei. Maliach is also not kulei. Fine. We have to establish a few things when it comes to Malicha. And I know you guys are hopefully in the middle of Siman Tzadik base. We'll get there. So I'm a little behind in the Shiurim. So actually view it as a chazara, believe it or not. The Shiur is mamish a chazara because you already passed it and you already forgot it. So b'meila we can reignite the inyanim. So we have to figure out a few things by Malicha. Number one, how much salt do we need? And number two, how long does it take until it heats up? So if you take water, and I ask you, how long does it take for water to become hot? What's going to be the answer? I don't know. Depends how big the fire is. Depends how much water you have. Depends a lot of factors, right? So the melach, there's a question, how long does it take for melach to become hot? So let's start off with how much salt. So in Torah we know, this is all in the Torah, I'm not telling you any chidushim. In Torah we know that there is a shir melicha that does something else other than making something hot. That's called taking out dam. That's called melicha, to take out dam. Even those that hold maliach is not kireteach still hold that melach takes out dam. The choladeis, even though it might not be al pitei hat. Melicha, to take out dam, is called melicha l'kdeira. Why is it called melicha l'kdeira? It doesn't mean what your mother salts a piece of flesh before she cooks it. That's not what melicha l'kdeira means. Melicha l'kdeira means to take out dam. Why is taking out dam referred to as melicha l'kdeira? Because there's another option to take out dam. If you like to have barbecue, you don't need to cook it. All you need to do is barbecue. Just do that, and that's going to take out the dam. So why in the world do we do melicha? Because I don't only want to barbecue because I want to cook it. And if you cook it without malicha, you have a serious problem. The dam comes out and goes right back in, asks everything, unless you have shishim. So that's why the term malicha, likdeira, is a code word for malicha, to take out dam. So after all the shittis that there are in the Torah, some say that there's two dinim. There's a malicha likdeira and there's a malicha kiretech. You need much more salt for that. L'poya we paskin like Rabbeinu Tam, that it happens to be the same amount of salt. The same amount of salt that it requires to take out dam in the shlachtos, which is einei nechal machmas milchoy, basically a layer of salt that you can't eat it because it's too salty. That's it. That's the same shear that will also make moliach kireteach. Very, very simple. That's what the Mechaber says. Point number one. Point number two, how long does it take till it becomes hot? So the Mechaber Paskin is like the president from Barcelona, the Ran B'Shem, the Nossi from Barcelona. I don't know what he was president of, the shul, the government, but he was a Nossi, he had a title. And he says it takes the Shir Melicha L'Kdeira. What's the Shir Melicha? You live in Postvil, Medina Sayuva. How long is it? Anyone know how many minutes Shir Melicha is? 18 minutes. Kedei Shlishis Sha'ah Bekiruv. How much is a Shlishis Sha'ah? Anyone know? 20. Bekiruv, says the Shach, Poches Chelik Lamed, a 30th of an hour less. How much is a 30th of an hour? Very good, 2 minutes. You guys know math. So therefore, 20 minus 2 turns into 18 minutes. That's the Shir Malicha. That's how long it takes for something to be hot. Okay. So if you take a piece of basar, you put enough salt on it, leave it for 18 minutes, now it's suddenly, boom, it's hot. So if you put it onto cheese, it's going to make it treif. Put it onto the table, it's going to make the table what? Fleishik. Very good. Okay, how long is it hot for? Till when? So there's two ways it becomes cold. Number one, you wash it. Okay, if you have a lot of salt, you can't just wash it. You got to soak it. You got to get rid of the salt. Second option is when it dries up, which teaches us something else. If salt doesn't take out any lachluchis from the chaticha that you are salting, it's not reteach. In order for maliach to be reteach, you have to take out lachluchis. So, for example, you salted a dry piece of meat and no lachluchis came out. It could be there for 2 hours. It's not going to be reteich. It has to be reteach because it took out lachluchis. So when does it become no more reteach? In Yiddish, ois reteach? When it finally dries up. How long does that take? I don't know, a day, 12 hours, 20. I have no idea what it takes. What?
Depends on the size of the piece.
Depends on what room, with the moisture in the air. I have no clue. When it dries up, it's not hot anymore. That's a mefurish mechaber. Everybody turn the page. Imhem yeveshim. The mechaber says, if you salted basar and gvina, but they're dry, skip afilohem meluchim, skip the oy to the end. Sagi ba'adoche. If it's dry, page kuf yudalit, all you need is adoche. What if the guy spritz water on it after it's dried up? Does that make it again hot? No, that's called lachin beloy machbas malicha. Sure, it became wet, but it was already dry. Once it was dry or never got any lachluchis out of the chatikha, it's not hot. Even if you happen to make it wet. So that's simple. That's all the mechaber says. Before I go to the machloikis and the mechaber, I want to point out a few other properties in the kudus in malicha. Number one, b'shas you do tzli, when you do roast, me'ikar adin, you don't need any salting. By the way, you could take a piece of basar, like some of the tzfardim do in Miron. You know, you ever go to Miron? I was never there on like Baimer, and they put they make keves and izim over there, and they make. You don't need melicha. You pasha do tzliya. There's other issues, chlovim, dam, whatever, but all you need is tzliya. The minig is that we put a little bit of salt b'shas tzliya as well. Any of you ever made a leber? You ever roasted liver? Livers have to be roasted. Me'ikaradin, you don't need any salt, but the minig is you put a little bit of salt. That's called melichas tzli. Melicha likdeira is a full-blown melicha. Melichas tzli is a little bit of melech. At what point is it a little bit to a lot of it? I mean, how many grains of salt is between a little bit and a lot of it? Could you tell me exactly how many? No. So the Ramos Mechadish, okay, because we don't know what the gvul is between a little and a lot, even a drop of salt we're going to consider hot because we're not bucking. You don't know how much, right? Remember, we're talking to a guy that thinks he's a bucky even. The Ramos says we're not soymech on your bikius, and therefore even a drop of salt has to be considered hot. Behefsid meruba, the Ramos says, Behefsid meruba, go over to a guy who works in Iowa and ask him, listen, is this enough malicha? He tells you, no, it's not hot. But the chatchila, even if you think you know, we're not soymech on your bikius. So even a little bit of salt, the Rama is machmer. Point number one. Point number two, what if you salted it on one side? Does the other side also consider the teach? How would you figure out that answer? What would you need to do to figure out that answer? No, without looking at Shulchan Aruch. Without tasting it. Because it's not going to taste salty. The question is it going to be poil on the other side? No. Go call up a shoichet and ask him if you salted a basar on one side, is the whole basar kosher? That's the way you should find out. You don't have to. I know what it says. I know where he's going to look. I know it's from where he took it from. What's the din? If you did salt melicha to take out the dam on one side, does it affect the whole chaticha? The answer is behef semeruba al koponim, yes. The mechaber holds even b'diavad, yes. The svardim amekel lechatchila, if you did it by mistake, it's okay without a hef semeruba. The Ramot, at least even behef semeruba says, if you salted a piece of basar on one side, the whole basar is kosher. So what does that essentially tell me? That melach on one side is poil, on the other side. So the whole chaticha is hot, even if you're melech b'tzad echad. So nice to see you. I'm not going to say your name for the tape. But you, whoever you is, thank you. Where's your chavrusa? You don't know. Hashem chavrusa. I got it. Okay. So basically, that's another nekuda. The Ramos says this is a fact. Even though by malicha we're machmer, unless it's have semeruba, you need to do malicha on both sides. But for heat akoponim, we're going to assume that if you did malicha on one side, the whole thing is considered hot. Beautiful. Next point. Before we get to the b'chloikis, then we're going to discuss. I'm saying basics. I'm pushing straightening the whole thing out so you should have it clear because a lot of times it gets confusing when you learn the Shulchan Aruch. Number two, b'chlal by heat, what happens? We said in Siv Dala that if the bottom one is hot, it's as if they're both hot. So let's say you have hot meat over here and you put cold cheese on top. What's the din? What's asr? Both. What does that mean? The heat of the bottom one is maflit from itself and puts it into the cheese, and it also affects the cheese and schleps out of the cheese. Tam. Melach can't do that. Melach cannot transform a tofel. Tofel means not maluach. A non-maluach into a maluach. It can't affect it. It can push into it. Like for example, you can't make a table salty. You can't make a table l'chluchis to come out. But if I put treif on a table with salt, it's going to push it into the table. So melach could push into a tofel. Ve'enoi boy leya mimenu. So whenever you have isur and heter, let's not talk about basar and gvina because that gets confusing. Because which one is isur, which one is heter? They're both heter and they're both asur for each other, right? So let's talk about isur and heter. So you have basar treif touching basar kosher. Which one needs to be salted in order for the kosher to become treif? Only the treif one. What if you only salted the kosher one? So it stays kosher. It gives of itself into the treif. Okay, shkoyach, right? Shkoyach Rashi. But the kosher one stays kosher. That is called in the Gemara, tohir maluach v'tomei tofel. Shari. The only time isur, kosher, will become treif with malicha is if tomei maluach v'tohir tofel afilu. Tohir maluach v'tomei tofel. Shari. Because melech doesn't have the koyach to be maflit from the isur if the isur is tofel. Why do we use the word tomei and tohir? Anyone know? Usually, since when do we use tomei and tohir here?
It means like the kind
The Poskim uses by now.
Correct, but we don't use that anymore. Behemot tmei, we do, but we're talking about isur here. It doesn't have to be tomei, because it was referring to dogim in the Gemara, and dogim are referred to as dogim tmeim and dogim tahirim. But really, it's as if it says kosher maluach v'treif tofel, right? That's the din. Translate that now into basar and gvina, which you can't use the word tar and maluach and tomei tofel because they're both tar, they're both tomei. Translate it into gvina and basar. It's very simple. If you're melech basar and you touch gvina, what's the din? The gvina will be asur, and the basar will be kosher. Gvina maluach and the basar tofel. The gvina will be kosher, and the basar will be asur. If they're both maluach, boom, they both affect each other. There's a klal in hilchas melicha for dam. I did the torid lemiflat. When it's giving out, it can be beileya. Nice try. It works for dam only. It doesn't work for any other isurim. So b'mela, they each give each other.
Why not by the other sir?
I don't know why by dam. When you'll figure that out, I'll answer you why dam and not other isurim.
Oh,
Because I did Taran Lefal Debola. Says who? Checked it out. So somebody checked it out, and figured out it only works for Dam and not for Shari Suda, apparently. Okay. Not only that, there's another klal over there. It's called Keboiloi Kach Pelte. Not to be confused with the famous Keboiloi Kach Pelte by Hagolah. How do you kasher keli? Keboiloi, the way it went in. Kach Pelte, that's the way you have to kasher it. This is a different one. By Dam, it means it goes in and like a funnel, like a pipe, and it goes right out. So why don't we say the same thing here? It goes into the basar, goes into the gvina, and goes right out. Again, they checked it out, and whoever decided it happens by dam figured out that it doesn't work by shari surim. Okay, so maybe we got problems here. So for basar and gvina that are both maluach, they're both going to be treif. Beautiful. How much is it going to be osir? Melicha is only osir kidei klipa. That's why maliach is only kiroi teach. It's not kimavushal, unless it's what in sivav shomin. If it's shomin, how much is malicha osir? Cooling. Says the Machaber. Obviously, there's no difference if it's tato or ilo, if the melech is on bottom or the melech is on top. Because whenever the bottom one is cold, how much is it oiser? Can they clip it? And if the bottom one is hot, how much is it normally oiser? More than clip it, or kulay, or natila, depending. But melicha is no matter what. Can they clip it? So b'meila, ve'ein chiluk. That's what the Mechaber says, ve'ein chiluk. Not that there is no chiluk. There's no practical chiluk. Of course there's a chiluk. If the bottom one is cold, it's the reason for clip is because tato gavar. And if the bottom one is salted, the reason is because malicha is getting clip, right? But there's no practical difference. Comes the shachan yud beis, says anochanami. There's no practical difference when it's kochosh, when it's lean. But if it's shamin, you bet there's a difference. If the bottom one is not salted, even if it's shamin, it's going to only be yosef kedei clip it because tato gavar. But if the bottom one is salted and shamin, then it'll be yosef akoil. So when the Mechaber says ve'ein chiluk, it's in siv hey, not in siv vav. This is all the shach. Because in siv vav, when we're talking about shomen, says the shach, the Mechaber himself says it very clearly, not here. In Nuchas Melicha and Nuchas Taruvis, the bottom one has to be salted. So ein chiluk is practically, there's no difference. Prima God, that makes a order. There still could be a practical difference if the bottom one is salted or not, even by kochosh. What about b'di'evet? What if you couldn't do klippah? Or you forgot to do klippah? You lost the klippah. What do you do then? So if it's mitzat tato govar, remember there's a shit of the shach that it could be mutter b'di'evet. But if the bottom one is salted, maybe it'll be yosser b'di'evet. So he makes a order. There could still be chilukim even when it's kochosh. Beseder, nice order, beautiful, right? So far so good. Now we're going to go back to the machlokes shach and taz, the big one, and we'll just talk about it for a moment to explain it. So the Mechaber said, how long does it take for salt to become hot? It takes 18 minutes. Agav. The Shach says, this Ran, who brings the B'Shem Denosi, is a das yochid. Most Poskim hold it becomes hot right away. As soon as the lachluchis starts to come out of the chatiche, it becomes hot right away, and so does Paskin the Shach. There's no such thing as waiting 18 minutes. He doesn't bring it here, but there is a diuk from the Mechaber in Siman Kuf Hei, right in the beginning, he seems to be choylek on what he writes here, and he seems to write that it becomes hot right away. At least that's what the Gro learns. The Vilna going over there, and the Goy Sagro, the Bir Agro, Befedish seems to be learning over there that the Mechaber is soiser himself, and there he doesn't hold like that on. Okay, but either way, the Shach definitely argues with the Mechaber here that it becomes hot right away. The problem is, what about after 18 minutes? The Mechaber says it stays hot, it actually begins to be hot from after 18 minutes up until, according to the Mechaber, two options, or you wash it off, or it dried up, correct? The Ramah says it's a machlokes rishonim. It's simple as that. There are many rishonim that say it's only hot for the first 18 minutes. After 18 minutes, it's not hot anymore. So what to do when you have a machlokes rishonim? So the Mechaber, the Ramah found a Trumas Hadashin. And Trumas Hadashin had a story, mamish like that. Some guy salted the ducks, geese, and he found out later they were treif. But after 18 minutes, he put them on the kosher basar. They came running to the Trumas Hadashin. What do we do? He said, listen, Poskim. Some say it's hot, some say it's not. It's a bris. Hefse merubah. You know, everybody's got to eat. What are you going to shut down the bris? So hefse merubah, and it's sudas mitzvah. I'm telling you, you can rely on the Poskim that it's not hot anymore. You know, that's what the Trumas Hadashin paskins. So the Ramah decided, I found this Trumas Hadashin. Aha, I got the Mechaber. You say it's hot forever until it dries up or until you wash it off. I'm telling you, very nice, but yes, showing him that it's not true. Yes, showing him that after Shir Malicha, after 18 minutes, it's not hot anymore. So if it happens to be a story of a bris milah plus a hefsed berubah, it wasn't one piece of chicken. It was all the whole cheshbon of the whole bris. You could be mekel, and it's mutter that it's cold after Shir Malicha. So paskins that I'm here. Agav, there's a whole discussion in the Achronim. How could that be hefsed berubah by a bris or a simcha? Whose hefsed is it? The caterer, or why? You have to eat. You eat at home. So whose hefsed is it? The Baal Simcha, but it's not your hefsed. So can it become a hefsed merubah for the Baal Simcha, and therefore I'm allowed to eat it? He's never going to tell me what happened. He's going to call it off. He's going to say it's a hefsed merubah. The Rav is going to say it's okay. And for you, you're going to eat it. For you, it's not a hefsed merubah. You'll survive. You won't eat chicken by the bris. You'll eat chicken at home. See, if you're feeding your family and it's a hefsed merubah, okay. But here, everybody's individual. What? So this is not enough. You also need to have some merubah, both. Huh? What? But that depends how much.
No, wait, Sudas mitzvah, so you want...
You need two, you need to have some merubah and Sudas mitzvah to be mekel. I'm asking, b'chalal, that's a general question. Anytime there's a heter b'hef some merubah, can a caterer get that heter? For him, it's a hef some merubah, because the guy's not going to pay him. But for the guy who's eating the treif, it's not a hef some merubah. So you find the machlokes achronim. Some say, anochanami, it doesn't work. Oh, hefsed merubah only works if the people who have to eat it, it's a hefsed merubah because it's your family. But because the caterer is going to lose his money, doesn't mean I have to do an aveda. The one who's eating it has to be hefsed merubah. Others say, no, absolutely, it's called hefsed merubah, or else he's going to lose a lot of money. So it's already a hefsed merubah. Say that, it's machlokes achronim. I'm just pointing out, when you talk about a catering job, famous joke, by the way, under the chuppah once, somebody came over to the father of the chassan and said, Hashem, mazel tov, you're the Baal Simcha? He says, no. I'm the Baal Choiv, the caterer. He's the Baal Simcha. Okay, it's a famous word.
If it's mutter, we didn't have some merubah. Is it still better not to eat it?
For sure, not even a question. Absolutely. Okay, nachzer le'inyoneinu. So brings the Ramo. All right.
Stop. On that note, would it be like a good thing to do to you not eat it but give it to like poor people, or that's
for sure? Yeah.
But,
yeah,
okay, for that
we do that all the time. You know, your father's a sefer. No, when you have a mezuzah, that's a kosher, but the eved only, right? So you buy yourself a new one, you give it from Mitzrayim. And that's what we do. Poor people, meaning they're poor. They're not going to pay for a mezuzah, even if they're rich. So for hilchos mezuzah, they're poor. So you do it. It's kosher. Okay. So the Ramah basically says, I'm telling you that if you have a real serious situation, have some merubah and sudas mitzvah, you could be mekel that after 18 minutes it's not hot anymore. He actually didn't make it up. It's a Trumas Hadashin. It's a very clear story in Trumas Hadashin. The Shach says, I looked up all these Rishonim and I found the problem. There's a stir in the smag. The same smag that you brought that says after Shir Malicha it's not hot, says after Shir Malicha it is hot. Something very fishy here. He said, I did a little more digging and I actually realized that there's no machloikis, says the Shach. It all depends why you did the Malicha. All those guys that said after Shir Malicha it's not hot anymore, we're talking about you did Malicha for dam. Whenever you did malicha for dam, when did the salt for sure start to work very, very much? Right away. So it's like you walk up a mountain. When you get to the top of the mountain, you're tired. That's it. You're out of breath. So after it finished working for 18 minutes to get out all the dam, it's taka lost all its koyach. But if you stam salted a piece of flesh that you took out of your fridge, right? It's not working very hard. It's working slowly. It'll go forever. If you're walking straight, you can walk and walk and walk until you dry up, until you wash it off. There's no machlokes in the shaynim. So I don't know what you're talking about. In Hilchos Melicha for Dam, it's taken not hot after Shir Melicha. It's called Pasuk Hamela. Here, the holidays it's hot. There's no heter here. In the story of the Trumas Hadeshin, why were they Melech, the treif geese? Take for Dam. He got it right. Really, you don't even need to have Semiru B'Sudas Mitzvah. It's taken not hot anymore. We'll talk about that in a moment. It's Be'etzim not hot anymore at all. Pseider, done. Over here, Hilchos Basar Bechalav. Sorry, why are you being Melech this piece of Basar? I don't know, because you decided to be Melech a piece of Basar. Not because you want to take out Dam. There is no Dam, it's out of your fridge, right? There's no such Yesh Oimrim. This Ramah, delete. The Yesh Oimrim, the La'achash Shah, Shir Melicha, Loi Mikra Achach. No way. There is no such Yesh Oimrim over here. It will be hot forever until you wash it or until it stops being wet. So B'meila, says the Shach, that Ramah Posha made a huge blunder and mistake. And there is no heter by Melicha Shnia, I'm going to call it, by his second Melicha, to be Mekel, Behav Semeruba, and Sudas Mitzvah. I don't care what happens, you cannot be Mekel, Achashir Melicha. Ad Kedekach, there's a Prima Godem and Ilchus Melicha that says that Amah Adam, and somehow he put it in here. He must have figured you're a Talmud Chacham, and he must have figured out, you should have known that when he writes for Yesh, he means in a case where you're Melech Madam. There is no other way to explain this Ramah. The Shach, it's not a real teretz. I mean, whatever, it's an excuse.
Why is it not a question on the Tumas Hadeshin?
It is.
So why are we...
So listen. This shayla that the Shach is asking on the Ramah is actually a shayla on the Trumas Hadeshin. He's the guy that made it a machloikis. There is no machloikis. And a charam. He's not just arguing. Hey, we know where the Ramah made the mistake from. He took it from the Trumas Hadeshin, who learned that there's a machloikis, because he didn't dig a little bit. Scratch the surface, you'll see there's no machlokes. I scratched the surface, and I'm telling you there's no machlokes. He got it wrong, and therefore the Ramah also got it wrong. I've had 100%. It wasn't a kasha. You're right.
So we'll uptight the Ramah.
To kvetch the Ramah, he should have known better. I hear you. Stop. I should tight your face.
What was the machlokes again in the Tumas Hadeshin said?
That is machlokes for the shaynim. Some say after Shir Melicha it's cold, some say it's hot. It's really not true. Everybody agrees about Basar Bechalav it's hot, and everybody agrees by Dam that it's not hot. So how are you bringing it in over here? Actually, what's interesting is in Hilchos Melicha, there's a long Taz that's almost identical to this Shach. He writes over here, the Taz Ches, Il Simis Samachtas Sivchof, Sivkot Mem Zayin, Bi'arno Hadvarim Ma'ilu. What he means is, I did the same thing the Shach did, and I argued on this Trumas Hadeshin, I argued on the Ramah. Actually, in there, it makes sense, because there was a Melicha for Dam, but to bring it here, it does not make sense. And the Taz said, I'm not going to waste everybody's time. Twice, go look it up. I didn't make you look it up, because we have it here in the Shach. That's fine. Okay. So you have a clear machlokes here. That the Ramah got it wrong. Everybody agrees, Achar Shir Melicha, it will be hot when it's a Melicha Shnia. The problem is, if that's the case, by the story of Dam, the Trumas Hadeshin was also wrong. Why do you need to have Semirubah? Why do you need Sudas Mitzvah? After Shir Melicha by Dam, Posak Koyach HaMelech. Right. Besides the point that there's a Yesh Misha Isur over there also, which I'm not going to go into, but I'm going to tell you the background of what's going on here to explain why the Shach is Miyashev the Psak. Not the Trumas Hadeshin, but he agrees to the Psak that even there you need to have Semirubah and Sudas Mitzvah, and I'll tell you why. This whole story there is called Maisa de Rashi. Not there in Trumas Hadeshin, but in the Gemara, in Tosfos. Rashi's house, Maisa Ire Bebeise Shal Rashi. It's called, the Tur brings it like that as well. Not here, but in Hilchos Melicha. Some guy did Melicha in Rashi's house for fleish. They were eating supper, or whatever it was the next day. And you do Melicha with a kli menukiv. You have to have holes where the blood should drain, right? After Melicha, you put it in another bowl and you wash it off. The guy put it in another bowl and he got a phone call. Okay, he left for the phone call. He forgot about the basar. Comes back an hour later, oops, it filled up with juice with tzir. We got a huge problem, Rashi, now. This tzir has dam in it. It's mixed with the dam with the salt. We'll have a whole shiur on it in Hilchos Melicha. If the basar is still hot, what happened to that dam now that's in the tzir? Where did it go? Right into the basar. Can we eat it? Rashi said the problem. It's kosher. All the Rishonim say why? Because Rashi's learning after Shir Melicha, it's posher, it has a din of cold. Posak koyach hamelech. That's Rashi's shit.
Why is that reason?
But it still stayed.
Why is that reason to be matter?
That's why you mut. It's cold. No? Wash it off.
The dam is cold?
Everything's cold. The basar's not hot. It's only hot because of the salt. After 18 minutes, it's not hot anymore. Cold basar that falls into cold dam, what's the din?
At least they clip it, no?
Nothing. It's cold. Do atoche. Sif aleph and simen tzadik aleph. Basar l'gvina shenogo zeh bazeh tzoinenim. Hadoche. Wash it off. Move on. That's what Rashi Poskim. Okay, beautiful. There's one shit in the Rishonim that say Rashi never meant that the basar is cold. Rashi meant that the dam is cold and the basar can't go in. The dam can't go in. But the basar stays hot. Rashi never talked about the basar. Rashi said the salt is pasa koichei, and therefore the dam that might be around there can't go in, but the basar is still hot. Rashi would agree if you idiot took this basar before you washed it off and put it on the table will become what? Fleischig. And if you put it on cheese, what would be the din of the cheese? Treif. And if the basar was treif, what would be the din of the kosher? Treif. Rashi was only talking about dam. There is such a shit in the Rishonim. If that's true, then in the story of the bris by the Trumas Hadeshin, where the basar was also not just issue of dam, what was the issue with that with the goose? It was treif. So according to Rashi, even according to Rashi, when you put this goose on the kosher basar, it's going to answer them. Now we don't hold like that shit, but Shalei Behev said you should be machmer said the shach. So the Trumas Hadeshin got the psak right over there because there's a different shit that Rabbeinu Peretz and the smak that say in Rashi Gufe that the basar stays hot. And therefore, when it was an avos tereifa, you should be machmer shalei have some meruba.
So by the story of Rashi, what was the reason why?
Because it was a kosher basar. What's the problem? Rashi would agree.
The basar is hot. Doesn't that make
the kli fleishik? Yeah, there was never a question.
Doesn't that make the blood?
No, I told you. Rashi agrees for the blood. It doesn't go in. We'll talk about it. Yes, we'll talk about it in Hilchos Malicha. Yes, the gabed dam it's stuck in not hot anymore, but the basar is still hot. Now the Trumas Hadeshin shlogged up such a svara, if you remember. For those who remember. He didn't slug up the svara. He slugged up the shitte. He says that the Rosh and Tosfos certainly don't hold like that, and he brings a proof. Okay, take. Most of the Shonim though are not mechalik. They hold that Rashi holds. Not only is the dam cold, but the basar is also cold. But there is the smak. There is Rabbeinu Peretz. The Taz writes the same thing in Hilchos Malicha. There are mechalik between the basar and the melach and the dam. So according to them, the basar might stay hot even according to Rashi, and therefore. It's a problem. So therefore you need to have some merubah sudas mitzvah. This is just a side note of the shach to explain the case of the Trumas Hadeshin. The ikar point of the shach is to argue on the Ramah here. Here, there's no heter whatsoever. After Shem Belicha, when you're not being meleach for dam, to assume that after 18 minutes it's cold. En kazeh davar. Done. Never happened, never began. Nicht gestoigen, nicht geflogen. He made a mistake, claims the shach. The Trumas Hadeshin made a mistake, claims the shach. Prima Godim says maybe the Ramah got it after the Trumas Hadeshin, and he was talking about dam some freaky weird way. I don't know, but either way, it doesn't. We have to know that the Ramah's din here is not true. Shach holds like that, the Taz holds like that in Hilchos Malicha, and that's the maskona. And even by Malicha for dam, agav. Even according to Rashi, there is one opinion in that shita gufa that the basar still stays hot. So therefore, if you take this basar after shemalicha for dam, and it was treif and you put it on something kosher, it'll make it treif. If it was fleishik and you put it on something parev, it'll make it fleishik. If it was basar and you put it on gvina, it'll make it treif. Yeah, for dam it's kosher. Most poskim are not mechalik. Okay, beautiful. This is the basic of
There's no one that says that regardless, even by Basar Bechalav, after 18 minutes.
No, nobody. That's the point of Shach says. The Trumas Hadeshin apparently argues with the Shach. But the Shach says nobody. No Rishon. That's why there's no stir in the smag. It depends what we're talking about. For Malicha Verdam, the smag says, Pasakeh HaMelech. For Malicha Shni, it's not Pasakeh HaMelech. It's very, very simple. All right. Now comes the Ramah with a few more ha'aras, interesting ha'aras. He goes like this. Going back to the properties of Melech, if you remember, I'm going to quote it in the Lashon HaGemara, which the Ramah does. Toer Maluach, Tomei Tofel, Shari, which means Melach could only push into the tofel, it can't take out of the tofel. Therefore, if only the heter is Maluach, Shari, which would mean by Basar and Gvina. If Basar is Maluach and it touched Gvina, the Gvina is also, but the Basar is Mutter. Says the Ramah, yeah, that's if it touched Gvina. What if it fell into milk? Liquid. What are you going to say there? The milk is for sure also, because the Basar gives into the milk. Does the milk seep itself back into the Basar? Does the Basar need to do a po'ula to get tam out of the milk? Or if I'm hot and I fall into liquid, automatically what will happen to the liquid? It'll seep itself into me. Does the klal of Torah Maluch, Tomei Tofel Shari even apply to liquid? Which means, yeah, you take kosher basar and it fell into treif chicken soup, cold chicken soup, milk, salted treif basar, kosher basar, fell into treif chicken soup. Does the treif chicken soup seep into the basar? Ramah says yes. This klal only applies to solids, not to falling into a liquid. Let's see it inside the Ramah. Then both are also. Look at the Ramah. The time look with Tomei Tofel Shari. I know Shat Tomei Yovesh. What does Yovesh mean here? Does it mean dry or solid? Dry, guys. What do you think it means?
What does it make a difference?
I don't know. I asked you what you think it
If
is.
you have a dry liquid.
No, the tamei, the maluach. The maluach, yeah, is kosher. And what did it touch? A yovish. The tamei was tafel, the isur is tafel. Touched it yovish. What does yovish mean here? Solid or dry?
Solid.
No, it means solid. Doesn't matter if it's dry or not. Doesn't matter. But it means it's solid. Yeah?
Why didn't say gush?
Chveisnish. It's interchangeable words. Yovish here means solid. Touch the solid. I don't care if it's dry or not. What does the word sol mean normally? Here it means liquid. Normally it means clear, but here it means liquid. But it found the liquid. The example I gave, basar that was maluach, instead of touching cheese that's tofil, what did it touch? Milk. Nesaratoir. It becomes asr. Why? Since it's salted, boileya, you have to add a mem, meha isur she'etzloi. It seeps in. It's boileya. He doesn't explain why. I explain to you why. It's obvious. If I'm salted and I fall into liquid, it seeps in. Ushneya masurim. Therefore, they're both asr. Not only is the liquid asr, obviously, from the basar, that's maluach, but even the basar becomes asr because the liquid automatically seeps in. Correct?
Kulei or kidei klipa?
Bald. Okay, I'll answer you now. The Ramah holds every melicha is kulei because we're not baki ben kochos l'shomin. I forgot to mention that before. The Ramah holds v'yesh oimnim the kol melicha onu m'sharim b'shishim, which means every melicha is always oiser kulei. Why? Since the Mechaber says even shomein is oiser kulei, we're not baki ben kochos l'shomin as we discussed 2-3 shiurim ago and just before about salty as well. We're not baki ben kochos l'shomin, so it's oiser kulei. So shnei masurim means kulei. Okay. By the way, the Ramah makes a comment here. The basar that's salted has to be a little wet, because if it's completely dry, we already discussed in the beginning of the shiur, it's not hot at all, right? I don't know why he makes this a order. It's like duh. The Mechaber says it in a minute. But he points out, v'dafke shehatoir, which is salted, lach ktsas. Alimu yovish legamri, of course, einu b'leya midover lach she'etzlei. Not only that, it's not even going to be oiser the milk, because it's completely cold when it's dry. I have no idea why the Ramah decided to write this.
Cold milk that falls in, the meat that falls into dry, cold, salted milk that falls into.
Yeah, that's called lachin loy machmas melicha. Nothing. Even though it became wet from the milk, that's lachin v'loy machmas melicha. It has to take out the moisture because of the salt.
But the moisture from the milk wouldn't like rejuvenate the salt.
No, the Mechaber says befedish. Lachin v'loy machmas melicha is no problem, huh?
It's like a duck on the meat because it's drenched.
You do a dacha. You need to do a dacha. Of course you need to do a dacha. It's like cold meat, fall into cold milk. You need to do a dacha. I don't know why the Ramah makes this comment. Because it's a mefurish Mechaber a minute later.
In case you didn't know.
Say that, I'm just telling you. Stop my miramuz. Okay. Beautiful. Correct? So far so good. The Ramah makes a comment. Does the Mechaber hold of this chumrah, by the way? That if salted kosher fell into treif liquid, or basar falling into milk, does the salted kosher also become asr? Short answer is, what do you think? Does the Mechaber hold of it? What?
Yeah.
Without saying, I don't know. What do you think?
Yes.
You think yes. Why? Because it makes sense.
Yeah.
So the Minchas Kohen says no, because he doesn't bring it. So obviously he disagrees. That's what the Minchas Kohen writes.
Because we're so passionate, you didn't bring it.
Obviously, you and the Minchas Kohen are obviously on two sides of the coin. That's fine. You could go to his cave and have it out with him. But that's what he claims. And by the way, the Minchas Kohen refers to the Mechaber as the Maharik, Rabbi Yosef Cairo. I don't see many as far as the Poskim how they refer to the or Moro and Mechaber. He calls it Marik. Rabbi Yosef Cairo. Usually Marik is one of the Marik Kulin. What? Right, the Marik Kulin is usually who the Marik is, but he means the Marik. It took me time. I'm reading him. Marik. I thought he means Shalchus Marik. But he means the base of Cairo means the Rabbi. He says the Mechaber disagrees with because he doesn't bring. Okay, fine. Here we run into a big problem. Look at the Shach. Tesvav. The bottom of Kufyud base. Nesar Atoir. Me'acher she'enu maluach. The next word is me'acher, not me'achar. It's a ches tsuruya. What's tsuruya mean? It's a ha'ara on the side. That it's a ches tsuruya, not a ches patucha. Patucha means a patach, and it's tsuruya means a tzere. Nesar atoir me'acher from the other one, she'enu maluach, from the unsalted one. The machmas milchay beleya me'a'iser she'etzlei, kein tzorich liyas. In our girsa, in the Taz, the bottom. Tesvav, you see?
It's in Dibur Maschil.
It's in the Dibur HaMaschil. Nesar atoir me'acher from the other one, she'enu maluach. I'm getting there. Why do you think I'm talking now? If I wouldn't be telling you enough Kimina, I wouldn't waste my time, right? Chad vod chad time. Our girsa, and as well as the Taz, says me'achar she'ein me'achar since patach. Since it's not nechal machmas milchay, Shach changes it to me'acher de machmas milchay. Says the Pri Megadim. I'll tell you why. The Shach had to change it because a minute ago, the Ramah Poskim, how much salt do you need to make something hot? A lot or even a little? Because we're not bucky. What did Rama say a minute ago? He went a little. So suddenly here he changes to Ein Enach Machmas Milcha. What are you contradicting yourself in one sif? Why are you writing that there's a lot of salt here? Why need a lot of salt here?
Well, because any amount equals Ein Enach.
No, that's not true. And that's a nice try, but that's not true. Ein Enach Machmas means something. And the Rama should have just said Machmas Milcha, which is why the Shach changes it. He doesn't want to make a contradiction. Why would he say Yikaradin if a minute ago he said salt? Stop being so yourself. That's why the Shach changed. Says the Pri Megadim, but the Taz. Ulai behefsid merubah mayri. We decided that behefsid merubah we are a bucky in how much salt, correct? So maybe the Taz learns this mechrama talking about behefsid merubah. I'm going to bring you a proof that the Ramah is talking about hefsid merubah.
Wait, so again, what was the verse?
Maybe it's talking about hefsid merubah. Hefsid merubah, we're bucky, so you have to have a lot of salt.
Why don't you say it's talking about shamin?
Nachamo.
We're not bekim in shamin, but we also not bekim in melicha, but we don't say we're not bekim on both.
We're getting there. That's one of the terutzim. We'll get to in a second. It's very good. But Pashib Shat, it says, Ein Enach Machmas Milcha, it says the Pri Megadim, Ulai behefsid merubah mayri. Correct? Okay. I'll prove it to you that it's behefsid merubah takeh. And he doesn't bring this proof. Look at the next Ramah. Kol Tzir. The next Ramah on page Kufi Dawud. Kol Tzir, mi bosa shenimlach, afilu loy nimlach rak letzli choshev letech. Even if you have a little bit of salt, the bosser might be cold, but the tzir that comes out is for sure hot. Because kol koyach hamelach b'tzir. How did the tzir come out? Because you salted it. So obviously there's a very concentrated amount of salt in the tzir, so the tzir is hot. Everybody freaks out on the Ramah. What are you talking about? The bosser is also hot according to you. I don't know. What do you mean the tzir is hot? The bosser is also hot.
But this is by melicha, so after it was...
The Ramah holds that even by melicha, a little bit of salt, the melicha is hot. The bosser is hot.
It was already past the share.
Well, he talks about it. Past the shit, the tzir is also cold. If you're going to go with that shit, then even the tzir is cold. Must be all the achronim right on the side. The Ramah here is for sure talking about a case of behefsid merubah, obviously. And even behefsid merubah, when the basar is not hot, remember the tzir is hot. Yeah. Oh, so you see that the Ramah bepashtos, without saying, could be talking about behefsid merubah. Correct? So b'meila, ani yomer, I'm adding for the Pri Megadim that could be the Taz is learning that the previous part of the Ramah is also talking about behefsid merubah, and that's why he said in Nachmachas Milcha. But Tzvi Horovitz came with a better teretz. There's a Meidikir of Bekiveger over here, which is where he got it from. He didn't make it up. There's a Meidikir of Bekiveger here, Sivkot Nei, that says a new chiddush. How many times could you consider a guy in the same story an idiot? I mean, bottom line. I mean, we're talking about, remember I told you, when the Ramah says, Einon Abiki, Mekochosh L'Shomer, it doesn't mean me. I don't need a Ramah to see that I say that I'm not a Baki. I take it not a Baki. I don't know. The Baki is not a Baki. It means you're taking a smart guy and you're telling him he's an idiot. Yeah. How many times? Says the Rebbe Kiveger, once per story. You can't make a guy crazy twice. So for example, you have a little bit of salt on a piece of basar kochosh. What's going to be the halacha? What do you need to do to make the cheese osir kulei? Number one, you got to start off, you're an idiot in the salt. How much salt is there really? You just don't know what you're talking about? A lot. Okay. Now that it's hot, kochosh is osir normally how much? Kedei? Klippa. But you're a double idiot and you're not a bucket, but kochosh is shamin. So now it's shamin and it's osir hakoil. He says, today, ein bekim, lo yamrinon. We don't consider a guy a meshugana twice in the same story. So which one do you pick? The salt or the kochosh?
The salt. Because this way, it's not iser anything.
No, it is iser. No, which one do you consider him an idiot? Where do you start? With the salt or the kochosh? Why do you start with the salt? It'll be a big nafkimin. If you start with the salt, it'll be at least aser kedei klippa. If you start with the kochosh and shaman, it won't be aser at all. Because who cares if it's shaman? Hey, it's cold. So where do you start?
The salt.
You have to start with the salt, because that's the problem. You can't start with the kochosh and the shaman. Shaman cold is not a problem. You have to start with the problem. What's the problem here? That I have basar shaman? It's not a problem. Problem is the salt. Okay, we took care of the salt. The salt is a lot, because you're an idiot. That's it. Once you used up the idiot shaft, you can't be an idiot again, says the Rebbe Kiveger. Ubemela, how much will the basar asr only kedei? Klipa, because you're a bucky now by kochosh the shaman. Says the Rebbe Kiveger. Okay? That answers why over here that Ramah says there's a lot of salt. Since it says Shnei Masurim, how much is it going to be? Osir, Shaya, you asked me before. What did I tell you? Kuloi. Because we're not Baki Bekochosh L'Shomen. You better have a lot of salt. Because if you only add a little bit of salt, how much would it be, Osir? Can they clip it? So the fact that Ramah says Shnei Masurim, meaning it's always going to be Osir Kuloi, because we know that Ramah's Shita, Einon Abiki and Bekochosh L'Shomen. That's why the Taz says, the Girse is, Einon Echo Machmas Milchoi. You must still have a lot of salt. Because if you're only going to have a little bit of salt, we're not going to get the kuloi, because you used up the idiot shaft. You used up the Einon Bekiim already on the salt. And that's why it's a Einenach Machmas Milcha. The Pri Megadim didn't know this. Why did the Pri Megadim have to write Ulai Behev Semeruba Mairi? Because the Rebbe Kiva Eger says, and the Pri Megadim argues with me, the clear Pri Megadim in Ilchas Tarubas, that we do make a guy crazy twice. Rebbe Kiva Eger says, I don't care. I think I'm right. That you don't make a guy crazy twice. That's what Rebbe Kiva Eger says about the Pri Megadim. But we know what the Pri Megadim shit attack is. Today, Ein Bekim Amrinon. That's why the only option that he had was Ulai Behev Semeruba Mairi, which I proved it also to be correct from the next Ramah, that indeed the Ramah is talking about Hef Semeruba, correct? But he couldn't come up with this answer of today and Bekim Lo Amrinon because the Pri Megadim argues on that concept.
Wait, so because it's Hef Semeruba, therefore what? Now it's...
No, because today and Bekim... Oh, Hef Semeruba, we're bucking and salt. That's why you have to have a lot of salt. Because it's Hef Semeruba, that's what we're talking about, you have a lot of salt.
Why is it Basar Kule then?
Because I don't know Bekim Mekachos L'Shama.
But doesn't Hef Semeruba make it more cool?
Hef Semeruba, we should be bucking Mekachos L'Shama too?
Well, we are not Baki Batson, but Bepayel will be Mutter.
That's a good question. The din is that we're also Baki B'Kochos L'Shama B'Hef Semeruba. That's a problem. That if it's Hef Semeruba, so you're Baki B'Kochos L'Shama too.
So what does Hef Semeruba change it?
That's a good question. It's a side question. All he's answering is for the salt, the Pri Megadim. And maybe it's talking about, you're coming with a new question. If it's Hef Semeruba already, so why is it Shnei Masurim? Because you're also Baki B'Kochos L'Shama B'Hef Semeruba. But it's a very good question. I don't think you thought it out ad kedekach, but it actually is a good question on the Pri Megadim status of Ulai B'Hef Semeruba Mairi. The minute it's Hef Semeruba, you're also Baki B'Kochos L'Shama. Baki on both.
Why without that is it a problem?
What?
If there's not enough salt, why is it
No, you have a lot of salt. Since it's a Hef Semeruba, so if there wouldn't have been a lot of salt, it would have been okay. The only reason why it's a problem is because you have a lot of salt. But if it's a Hef Semeruba, you also Baki B'Kochos L'Shama. So it wouldn't be Shnei Masurim. If it's a big story and a big loss. That's a problem that you have to deal with. Right harder. Now,
So how does this have to do with... So what's the difference between Me'acher and Me'achar?
no, one is how much salt there is. It's not about the word Me'acher. The word is it Machmas Milchei or Einenecha Machmas Milchei. If you change it to Machmas Milchei, it happens to be Me'acher from the other one. The real change is not on the Me'acher. The real change is on the next words. Is it Einenecha Machmas Milchei, that you have a lot of salt? Or is it Machmas Milchei, just because you have salt? That's the change of the Shach and the Taz. And have the Girs and the Ramah. Now, I want to teach you something else, because we're on this subject here, and I don't think we're going to finish everything on this for Tzadikala, but we only have a little left for the next year. But let me teach you something else. There's another halacha, by the way. If you have two svaras to be mekel, and each one needs a hefsa merubah to be mekel, and you have both of them, you don't need hefsa merubah. You follow? You don't need hefsa merubah. If you have two dinim to be mekel, and each one we don't rely on, only behefsa merubah. Since you have two, we don't need hefsa merubah. It's like a svek. Maybe these poskim who say this one is emes is true. But maybe not. That's why you need a hefsa merubah. Maybe the other one is true. And even if the other one is not true, maybe I have this one that's true. So if you have two dinim, they're both really need hefsa merubah. The minute they fuse together, you don't need hefsa merubah. Do you follow what I said?
Well, what's the example?
This case here, you have a little bit of salt and it's kochosh. Salt we're baki behefsa merubah. Kochosh hashama we're also baki and hefsa merubah. The din should be here that we're baki without hefsa merubah also in kochosh hashama. Because I have two kulas behefsa merubah.
Becomes two what?
Becomes two dinim that I can use hefsa merubah.
Yeah.
So then you don't even need hefsa
So how
merubah.
come the Sifshadas disagrees?
I'm asking a kasha. I'm asking a kasha on the Pri Megadim. How could the Pri Megadim over here disagree? Trei and Bekim le'amrinon. L'choide. I don't need hefsa merubah. Correct? And any time you have two dinim that are mutter behefsa merubah, you don't need hefsa merubah because like a svek. That's the din. The question is really on the Bekim Veger also. Why does you have to say because it's Trei and Bekim le'amrinon? Say because you need because they're both mutter behefsa merubah and you don't need hefsa merubah. No, we'll get to that in a second. We'll get to it in a minute. Taz said it. Very good. Trei and Bekim le'amrinon, right? So why does he have to say it like that? So it must be that when it comes to Bekiyas, you don't say you're making a hefsa merubah. In other words, when it's a machlokes poskim, then you could say, since that we're paskin like these poskim, each of them hefsa merubah, so you put them together and you could be paskin like lakuda without hefsa merubah. But when the reason for the chumrah is because of Bekiyos, that klal doesn't apply. Because not a machlokes poskim. It's because we're not saying you're Bekiyas, even though it says it in the poskim. So here you don't have the heter of the fact that you two dinim would have some meruba that you could be mekel. Therefore, the only heter that Beki Beger came up with is today in Beki and Le'amrina. Begodim argues on that. That's my ha'ara. Because that's what Beki is. Frekt Yossi Fried, but we learned in the Taz and a similar different halacha. Today, kuli behav some meruba le'makilinon. Now I'm telling you that if you have two dinim behav some meruba, you don't even need have some meruba. And the Taz says 2 times have some meruba, you don't say. So I'm going to explain to you the difference. And you already got it. If you have one story with 2 solutions, each solution needs to have some meruba, yeah? You don't need to have some meruba. 2 problems, you have to take care of each problem independently. You could use up half some meruba only once, then you're stuck with the other problem. Remember, one story, 1 problem, 2 solutions doesn't need have some meruba. 2 problems that each of them need to have some meruba, then you have to be machmir. Because even though you took care of 1 problem, you still have the other problem.
What did the Taz brings the 2 problems?
He lagab a little bit of salt and slitzoinen. They're each independently a problem. They each shamutim have some meruba, so you get to use up have some meruba once. You're not left with the other one. But if you have 2 solutions each that are okay to have some meruba and 1 problem, correct? Then you don't even need to have some meruba.
So here, since
Here you have 1 problem. The salt is the problem. I have 2 solutions. Number 1, it's not salty. Number 2, it's only kochosh. 2 solutions. Over here it would have been mutter if not for bikiyas. But 1 story with 2 problems, yeah? Then if each problem only needs to have some meruba, you get to use have some meruba only once.
You mean 2 stories with 2 problems?
1 story with 2 problems. It's 1 story, but it has 2 reasons to be machmir. Okay. Now, by the way, Ma'amir HaMuzgir, the fact that I told you that there is Tatah Gover by Melicha when it's Shomein, I mentioned, the Ramah argues. The Shach says there's no Tatah Gover by Melicha. Everybody asked a minute ago, you just said there is. It's Machlokes Mechaber Ramah and Siman Kufay, by the way. The Ramah says by Melicha, it doesn't matter what's on bottom, what's on top. If it's Shomein or we're not Boki Bekochs LaShomein, so it's always Yisra HaKoil. So it happens to be a Machlokes. Okay.
what's as far as
We'll learn that in Siman Kufay, but that's a good question. What's this for? Another interesting, weird thing in the Ramah here is the Ramah says that if Melicha today fell on a keli, what do you need to do to the keli? Really? What do you need on the keli? Klippa. If you can't do klippa because it's metal, what do you do? Agola. But really, if it's a kli eitz, what do you do? What about it on a bekiyah mekachos l'shamin?
It's by food.
So that's clean.
So what are you saying? You should be asking.
So the Prima Godim in Hilchos Taruvis writes that's by food. By a keli, we're bucky. It's not what he writes here. Here writes a different biur. By a keli, we hold tatah govar. Since the keli is on bottom and it's not salted, so it's only Yisra Kedei Klippa. In Taruvis, he writes, we're bucky ben kochos l'shamin. Here he's saying, even if it's shamin, it's only Kedei Klippa, because tatah govar.
But what does that even mean? That by Kaylee we are Bucky?
I don't know, he doesn't write that here. When we learn Taruvis, you'll ask me that. It's a good question. But Hilchos Taruvis, that's what he writes. Here he says, no. Here he says, it's by a keli, and a keli, we say tatah govar. So it comes out that if the keli would have been on top, you have basar maluach here, and you put a keli on top, how much is the kli going to be osir or fleishik? Kuloi.
We pass like both.
What do you mean?
Both. We probably follow both in the Chumrah.
Can sein. Okay, next case. What about if you have basar that's tofel fell into salted milk? Till now, the Rama was talking about the basar was maluach, fell into cold milk. What if the other way around? The milk is salted, heavily salted, so it's not called hadacha, you didn't wash it off, and basar fell in. So the basar is for sure osir, obviously, because the milk is salted, right? What about the salt, the milk? Does the milk also become osir? Shach brings a machlokes. He brings a Ramah that says the cholav is mutter, and he argues says the cholav is osir. The Achredim say, what's an afkimina? What's the svara, of the machlokes? Very poshut. When we say melach does not affect the tofel, let's say I'm salted and I touch you, right? So there's 2 ways to say why I'm mutter. Because I can't take any time out of you at all. Or I could, but I just can't schlep that back into me. Similar to our last shiur, that Irish Nifsaka Kiloch is not maflit umavliya ke'echad. So I could be maflit, but I can't take it back. Both ways I'm mutter. Even if I can't get anything out of you, I'm mutter. And even if I could, since I can't schlep it back, I'm also mutter. What's an afkimina? What if I'm liquid? If I can't get anything out of you, I'm also mutter. But if I could get it out of you, and normally I'm just mutter because I can't schlep it back, but if I'm liquid, what happens if I get it out of you? Where is it now? In me, automatically, right? So if you're liquid, then whatever comes out automatically mixes with me. Then I'm going to be osir. That's the svara of the machlokes of the shach, the 2 shittas that he brings.
And this is all the assumption there's no shisham, right?
Obviously. Correct. Agav, there's an interesting lashon here. The shach brings already twice. Bishagam. You see, the end he says bishagam. Where do we have bishagam already? Anyone remember? Bishagam. No, we're in the Shach. He mentioned where it says in Pasha Bereshis, B'Shagam Basar. The Shach, in the beginning, it's of Kotan Gimel and Pezayim. B'Shagam, Dechticha, Roy L'Skabat Gufein, and B'Derabbanan. Here he says also B'Shagam, on the Ran, yeah? What does he say? Does he say B'Shagam? B'Shagam, Sharan say, every time we look, okay, fine. Let's finish quickly. We'll finish the Siman now. Comes Sib Zayin with a crazy case. Chaber says, I'll tell you a case where even a little bit of salt is a problem. Basar, that's tzli. What does tzli mean? Not raw. Tzli, ofui, mevushal. It's already processed. And it's hot. And it fell into cold milk. How much is that oyser in Tziv Dalad already? Hot into cold. How much is it oyser? Kidei, chamel techzeinen? Klippa. That's abis. No chiddush here. I don't know why the Mechaber even brings it. Hot, basar, even raw is kidei klippa. Aha. But if it's tzli and it's hot and it has cracks or it's spicy, kulay osur. Kulay osur. Why? Because since it's soft already, it goes in, even though the bottom one is cold. Says the Chavaz Das, shishim won't even work. This is not a regular blia. Shishim only works when it spreads equally, right? This is a different kind of blia. You don't know where the milk is. It seeps into the cracks. There could be one packet that has more milk than the other. So even if a goy tastes one part and he tells you there's no tam cholov, the whole thing is still awesome. Because maybe the other side has more tam. It doesn't spread equally because it's not hot. The bottom one is cold.
Kavlan also?
Also. Yes.
Can you mix it?
What?
Can you mix it?
Mix into the meat? How are you going to do that? You can't mix it. The meat, it's a piece of meat. So it's also without shishim even helping.
No, I'm saying like rinse and make it like...
No, it's inside. The cholov seeps inside. It's hot and has cracks.
Meat and you
It goes in, but not b'shoveh.
Grind it
You
up.
should ground it up.
You got to do that l'chatchila? No, it's already treif. Okay. Maskim. A minute. So actually, there's a huge machloikis on Poskim. For this din, do you need at least a little bit of salt on the milk or nothing even also? The Mechaber is mashma that you have to have a little bit of salt. Correct? Comes the shach and says, no way, you don't need any salt. This is the same thing without salt. It's a little bit of salt is as good as no salt. So when the Mechaber says this, that we say a little bit of salt is normally okay, Mashenkin, for this din of cracks or tavlin, it's a problem. He really meant to say even no salt. So according to the shach, if you have basar, tzli, that's hot, it has cracks, falls into cold milk that has no salt, it's also asakuli. The Taz brings a mashal, kvetches. Not sure. By the way, there's a mistake here. Look at Sivkot Yud Beis in the Taz. It says al korchach, the fourth of the wide lines. It's supposed to be adkan. It's not al korchach. In the old Shulchan Aruch it said ayin kof, and these chachamim here, they translated it wrong. It's supposed to be adkan. That's the end of the mashal. Then he continues. Mashma. It's not al korchach mashma. It's a stira menei ubei. You can't have al korchach and being mashma. It doesn't make any sense. If it's mashma, then it's not al korchach. Right? Usually. Stop. Obviously, you can kvetch and tell me that it is, yes. But it's not. It's adkan. Okay? Ich weiß.
What is that? How does that even work? Why, if it's cold?
Because it's soft, hot and soft. Soft and cracks, it seeps in. Don't ask me, because of Gemara. Okay. However, many of the Shoinim Taina, that Sli in the Gemara means even cold. Not just hot, even cold. And according to the Shach, that means even cold without salt. You have a piece of schnitzel in your fridge. Piece of flesh, about in your fridge, freezing cold, the milk fell on it. If it has cracks, where does the milk go? Everywhere, and shishim doesn't work. Or if it's spicy already, marinated and spicy, but already not raw, was cooked or offered with bushel, usher everywhere. The Turk even goes a step further. Even if it's raw with cracks is a problem. We don't bring that in Shulchan Aruch at all. Raw with cracks is a problem. Huge stuff. Rabbi Yaroslavsky Shlita loves to ask that question. When is cold milk going to answer cold meat? If it's tzli with cracks or metuva b'tavlin, it's going to answer. Without cracks, it's going to klippa. And then I'm a Poskim like that. Shaloi behef semeruba. You got to go like those in the Shonim. Shaloi behef semeruba. You go like those in the Shonim. Here's what the Taz says. But if it's a hef semeruba and you also have a little bit of salt, you're messed up because you need two hef semerubas to be makel there. You got two problems. You have the problem of tzli, which you took care of hef semeruba, but now you have a problem of a little bit of salt, right? So there you already used up the hef semeruba, so it's going to be also. That's what the Taz writes is there. So that comes out that according to the Ramah, tzoinin is also going to be a problem. Point. In Hilchos Pesach, the Alter Rebbe says, chai, raw with cracks, is a problem, shalei behefsid, k'mesher kosav b'yeredeya simen tzadik aleph. That's what Alter Rebbe writes. If you open up Shulchan Aruch here, nobody brings the din of chai, only the Tur. So what's the source of this Alter Rebbe? Now the Alter Rebbe didn't write simen tzadik aleph, or at least we don't have it. So we don't know what he would have written. Right? But in our Shulchan Aruch, it doesn't say. Okay, so the Kaplans who have a sefer and the Alter Rebbe's shittas in the Yoreh called Piski Ad Morazokim Bilchas Yoreh, they kvetched and they found up Samogan Avram that seems to be the source. I think I have the source. I think it's a shach. The end of shach of Aleph, he claims, I don't know why the Ramo was makel behefsa meruba by cold. I don't think so, he says. I think most of the Shonim are machmer that Ramo should have never been makel behefsa meruba by cold. Right? If you go with that mahalach, so what's the next madrege where there's a chiluk of hefsa meruba and not? Chai. So it could be the Alter Rebbe learns from the Shach, who's medayik in the Shach, that cold, you're not even makel behefsa meruba. But where should you use hefsa meruba? By Chai. Could be that's the mocker of the Alter Rebbe. That Chai, even though it doesn't even talk about it, the Alter Rebbe's shit is based on the Shach, that even Chai you should be machmer shalei behefsa meruba. But I don't know if that's the mocker of the Alter Rebbe. But the Alter Rebbe does write that in Ilchus Pesach. Commission costs will be a day of Siman Tzadik Aleph. We'll stop here. The next year is going to be on Siman Tzadik Beis, or tomorrow, or Thursday morning, or next week, whatever. There's no yeshiva on Sunday.